Cambodia's king is expected to appoint Hun Manet as the country's new leader today.
His father, Hun Sen, said he will hand over the premiership to him after ruling for nearly 4 decades. The outgoing prime minister had just sealed his party's landslide victory in last month's election. The ruling Cambodian People's Party had swept 120 seats in the 125-member Congress. The election had been criticized by rights organizations as a one-horse race, with the country's main opposition barred from the polls.
Saturday's confirmation of Hun Manet's election as an MP paves the way for his smooth transition to power with a fresh 5-year mandate. Together with the king's appointment, it would allow him to form a new government following a confidence vote on the 22nd of August.
Incoming government is also expected to bring in a younger generation of party elites, taking up the posts vacated by their fathers. Hun Sen said handing the baton over to his son is designed to maintain peace and avoid bloodshed should he die in office.
Well, for more, we are joined by Dr. Sopal Yer, Associate Professor of Thunderbird School of Global Management at Arizona State University. Doctor, first of all, considering Hun Manet's capacity, academic background, and experience as the Army chief, how do you think these traits will shape his leadership style and ability to address challenges facing the country?
Well, I think it's wonderful that Cambodia will enjoy someone who has extensive Western exposure, West Point undergraduate degree, Master of Arts in Economics from New York University, PhD in Economics from Bristol University, and extensive military experience as a 4-star general. That is, I think, good news for Cambodia, which has so far had only Hun Sen as prime minister for 38 years. But it also doesn't mean that there'll necessarily be an immediate shift of any kind with Hun Sen looking in the background and making sure as head of the Cambodian People's Party, which holds the 120 out of 125 parliamentary seats, control over who is prime minister. So he's already said that if Hun Manet doesn't do a good job, he'll step in and take over the prime ministership again.
Well, it's not just Hun Manet. There's also a new crop of young ministers being ushered in, some of them taking over their fathers' roles before them. What are the implications of this dynastic succession in Cambodian politics?
Indeed. I mean, I call it a kind of primogeniture. It seems as though the oldest firstborn is taking the inheritance here. But I hope certainly that it means new blood, new ideas, reforms, possibly a change in direction for a country that has had the same leader and the same cabinet ministers for so long. I'm hoping that those young generation, younger folks will bring in their Western perspectives, hopefully in their ministries. It is sad to see, though, that a ministry would be a kind of fiefdom that is controlled by a family in which the firstborn inherits essentially that ministerial position. But and that, of course, is not a great thing for people who want to aspire with merit-based systems where they think they can contribute. If they're not born to the right family, they might not be able to contribute as a result of a system like this.
And Doctor, so what sort of priorities would Hun Manet need to work on, do you think, for the first 100 years?
Well, 100 days, I hope, in which I would say signaling that he is different from his father, that he has new ideas, that, I keep pointing out to the fact that when Lee Kuan Yew became Prime Minister of Singapore, the cabinet ministers he brought on and himself showed up in white shirts as a signal of clean government. This is something that I think in the first 100 days, Hun Manet should be very capable of trying to express, not necessarily by copying the white shirts, but by choosing, for example, to do things differently, to clean government, to demand an end to incompetence and corruption, whether it's conflicts of interest with respect to spouses of ministers who hold directorships in companies. That's an obvious conflict of interest. That's possible self-dealing possible interested parties. Uh, if one were to say, we're not going to allow that, we're going to use blind trusts to hold corporate assets, that would signal a different way of approaching things in Cambodia, certainly. And I would encourage that in his first 100 days if he is willing to do that. I think I know him personally. He's a wonderful person on a personal level, a good friend, and modest and very intelligent.
And thank you for disclosing that, Professor. What do you make then of the political climate in Cambodia right now? Then we get a sense of the optimism coming through from your answers to us. But leading up to Hun Manet's appointment as Prime Minister, do we know how the people generally feel about him?
It's hard to say because he hasn't had enough exposure necessarily. He's been out there. He has never held elected office. He has never held any kind of political position other than, of course, being a four-star general and holding responsibilities that his father has handed to him. But I think that people have to be a little bit more positive than another year of Hun Sen, right? I mean, after 38 years of Hun Sen, a 39th year is probably not going to excite people the way that possible change through Hun Manet and through new cabinet ministers who are from his generation, from Hun Manet's generation, that are going to be appointed to replace their fathers. I think that's great news. In the case of, for example, the National Bank of Cambodia, Cambodia's central bank, the daughter of the governor of the central bank is going to take over, and she's got Sheikh Sarai has got a really wonderful reputation with digital currencies and introducing new ideas and new policies and frameworks to the national bank. So that's already a great sign.
And moving away from domestic affairs, I mean, unlike his father, the U.S. Appears sort of interested in closer ties with Hun Manet, potentially shifting him away from Beijing's orbit. I mean, do you foresee any significant changes in Cambodia's foreign policy, particularly in relations with China and the U.S.?
Well, that is the billion-trillion-dollar question, right? I mean, this is going to mean a new opportunity for the U.S. to engage, and already with Hun Manet's UN General Assembly speech and visit to New York in September, we know that the U.S. ASEAN Business Council has already been in discussions with Hun Manet's office to have an appointment where he can make a speech in front of CEOs, U.S. CEOs, to try to change the perception of Cambodia as too friendly to China, too close to China. Of course, actions speak louder than words. It's going to be very hard after so many years and even decades of proximity to China in terms of alignment, whether it's the Ream naval base and allowing Chinese use of the facility or construction of the deep water port now there, that would somehow be thrown aside. Of course, Cambodia's position has always been stated as we're willing to talk to anyone. We want to be friends with everybody, including the United States. But it's words, and what we need to see are actions where there's going to be an understanding, for example, that U.S. citizen Thierry Sang, who is currently jailed for speaking out, but of course under the pretext of treason, is going to be let go, for example. There are lots of people hoping that Kem Sokha, who has been sentenced to 27 years, he's the main opposition leader based in Cambodia, will be freed at some stage. It's so important to send those signals that there's a new page turning, a new leaf, and Cambodia is changing.
Our Professor Year, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you very much for your insight this morning. Associate Professor Sopal Year, Thunderbird School of Global Management at the Arizona State University. Thank you.